Hey guys, I want to welcome you to today's honest conversation about things that matter. Today's topic is abortion, and this topic is one that is so deeply burning in my heart, and the thoughts are going in my mind. I've carried thoughts on this topic for so long, and I haven't said anything like many things in my life. And I hope that you trust me if you're connected with me here to handle such a sensitive topic, knowing that very much knowing that it's deeply tied to human experience, it's deeply tied to emotions and decisions. And even you who are viewing this, you might have known someone, been tied to someone, or you yourself might have had an abortion or encouraged a person to have one. And so I want you to understand that I'm not against you as I record this. I have no intention for this video to be used as a weapon to hurt people, as concerning this topic. My heart really is to get this dialogue going. And every generation, a generation has to make a decision on what they're going to stand for and what they're going to allow from previous generations. And I think it's important for us in this topic to really talk about it and to say, is abortion truly what's best for humanity? And my personal opinion is that it's not, that there's no place in humanity for abortion, that it's not something that is right. It's not something that is justified. And I want to just unpack my exposure to this topic, and as well as some of the things that I think people are building, their confidence in abortion on, and really address them, because I think they're straw houses that really don't hold up. And I want to challenge each of you to allow your mind to be open to some new ways of thinking on this topic, and allow yourself to be challenged. And there's a couple things I want to address before I jump into it. Number one is the idea that I have nothing to say on this because I'm a man, and that this is a woman's only topic. Truth is that this is not a woman's only topic. There's never been a woman who has conceived a human in her that has happened apart from a man's involvement in some way. This is not just a woman's issue or a woman's topic. This is a human issue. This is a human reality, and it's deeply tied to a lot of different things, not just this one thing. It's tied to justice. It's tied to our perspective of human life. It's tied to our perspective of human responsibility and mercy. And there's so many things that this one topic touches on in our worldview, in the way we view the world, interact with each other, the way we go about life. And I think it's really, really, really important, even more important than you might have ever realized. The second thing I want to address is that this is not me trying to be political. I have no desire to be political. I'm speaking to you as a human being in your heart and your perspective, in your view. I have things to say to politicians. I'm not talking to them right now. I'm talking to my friends. I'm talking to people who are connected with me on social channels to challenge you to think differently about this. And I hope I can bring some perspective that might challenge you in this. And one thing I want to add is that I understand that I have friends that have had abortions. And so as you watch this video, I know some of you, you look back on your decision and you regret it. You wish you would not have done that. Others of you might be confident in your decision. Either way, I want you to know that I'm not against you. I'm not saying these perspectives, and like I said, my perspective is that abortion has no place in the human experience, that it's not the best for humanity, that there's better solutions to every fear, every inconvenience, and every reason that would be used for an abortion, that there's a different response that is better. That's my personal opinion, and I'm going to hopefully share it with you, and you'll come to see why I think that. But I do want you to know that I'm not against you. I'm absolutely 100% for you. And my wife and I, we just had a child. Her name was, we named her Live Mercy. And part of this is even tied, and I was thinking about this the other day as I was thinking about talking about this, is that her name really reflects my heart on this topic, that live means life, that my heart is to stand and stand for life, to stand for all life, for the unborn, lives that are inside of women, being developed inside of women, and for life that's walking around in the earth today. That's really my heart for life. And then her middle name is Mercy, that I want to stand for life, but I also want to stand for mercy, that there's no place for people to shame women who have had abortions. There's no place for them to be put under guilt. But if you've gone through that and you're willing to have a shift of your perspective and say, hey, man, I might have done that, but I want to see that there's a different way that's better, and that has no place in humanity. I want you to know you don't have to get caught up in guilt. You don't have to get caught up in shame. If those feelings would come, just know that there's mercy for you. That if you're dealing with the guilt of what the decision you've made, if you feel guilt, I'm sure not everybody does, I'm sure some people do, but if you do, that you don't have to live with that there's forgiveness for you. You can forgive yourself, and there's mercy for you. And I know personally I don't hold anything against you. And then finally, I want to say before I jump in that my perspective I'm going to share today is a perspective that the different things I'm going to share is a perspective that I've really tried to just root in our laws, in science, in common sense. I am a person of faith, and if you're connected with me, you know that. What I'm going to share today isn't really driven by faith. It's kind of just driven by a ground that I think anybody, whether you're a person of faith or not, can land on. If you're a person of faith, I have a whole different set of thoughts as it pertains to that on this topic for you. But even if you're not, I think you're going to be able to be challenged a little bit maybe in your thinking as it pertains to this topic, even stripped away kind of faith. And so on those lines, I just want to start off by sharing my first story of my first exposure to abortion. And actually, it was when I was 6 years old, and my mom was pregnant with my little sister. My little sister was born with severe disabilities, hydrocephalus, spina bifida, and a lot of other medical complications. But before that, going up to her birth, my mom went in one day for an ultrasound, and the doctor told her, he said, hey, you need to know that your daughter's not going to live, and if she does live, she's going to be, medically speaking, a vegetable, meaning she'll be existing, but she won't show any form of like life and expression or anything like that. And he said, I'd encourage you to have an abortion. His opinion was she should abort my sister. And my mom said no. She said, I don't want to make that decision. And the doctor was infuriated. He took the ultrasound paddle, he threw it down, and he stormed out of the room. And I remember as a little boy just hearing about this encounter that my mom had with this doctor, this experience with this doctor. And it was such a big part of our lives because my sister was born. She was alive. She wasn't a vegetable. And just this past March, actually on the same day my daughter was born, my sister celebrated her 29th year of life. And I know the doctor gave his medical, opinion, and I'm sure it was grounded in science and all of that, but he was wrong. He said that my sister was going to be away and she should be aborted. And in reality, he was wrong. And my sister's lived a vibrant, beautiful life, even in the midst of her medical complications. She's been a joy to the world and every person who meets her. And so that's my first, experience with abortion. And just this past year, while my wife was pregnant with our little girl with Live Mercy, all these thoughts of abortion and the reality of it in our world kept coming into my mind as I would put my hand on my wife's stomach and I would feel my daughter move, and I would go to the doctor and see the ultrasound and see her heartbeat and watch her open her mouth and hear her, know she had hiccups because she was moving with like a hiccup, motion in my wife's stomach. These different thoughts about the reality of what people have used to defend abortion just came into my mind. And like the idea of like, it's a woman's body. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is not a woman's body. I'm feeling inside of, this is a unique human inside of my wife. What's going on? And these different things kept coming into my mind. And I realized, I'm like, man, the things that we've built up to defend abortion in our country and in our world, they are not coherent. They don't line up with science. They don't line up with the human experience. They don't line up with our laws. Like, what are we doing? It was almost as if we were these kids that we like said something and like to our friend, and then we just plug our ears and start humming a song, not willing to listen to what they would say back, no matter how ridiculous the thing we said was. Like grown adults just acting ignorant and literally like playing dumb as it pertained to this topic. And I want to kind of unpack that for us today. And just so you know, I understand that this reality is very real for many women. In America, 1 in 4 women, by the time they're in their mid-40s, will have had an abortion. And I need you to know, like I said, that it's okay. It's okay for you to change your mind on this topic. And I think for so many people, they're not even open to hearing about the value of life, because to do so would be feeling like somebody's putting shame and condemnation on them. I just want you to know there's none of that from me. And when I address these things today, I want you to know that I understand that the decision you made, whether it was one that you did like just flippantly or one that was agonizing to you, I understand that what you went through was unbelievably difficult. And the things that I'm going to say with bluntness and directness are not meant to be directed to you and the decision you've made, they're meant to be directed to the people that'll come after you who are considering these decisions and considering the way they're going to view the world and this reality in our world. I'm not attacking you, but I 100% am going to go after the thoughts, opinions, and beliefs that are defining people's perspective on this that don't line up and they shouldn't be here. Like I said, abortion is not the best for humanity. It's not the best solution for any of the issues that women are facing when they choose to have one. And I want to go through some of the things that we're looking at and things that people look to define and to reason as to why they justify abortion. First thing I want to look at is just the reality that when we are in 7th grade, at least for myself, I had a teacher named was Mrs. Price. She was health class at Roswell Kent Middle School in Akron, Ohio. Mrs. Price did a week of sex ed. It was the week that you just didn't want to chuckle, like it was a real first time in a public place with your friends. You're about to hear about mating and sex and all of that. And one of the things from sex ed that was a very, very clear thing is that the purpose of sex, or one of the main ones, or the outcomes of it, is that a human life could be developed inside of the woman as a result. She could get pregnant. This was not shied away from. This was very clear. And that was why they emphasized contraceptives so much, because they were trying to say, hey, if you're going to go do this, understand that the natural consequence of this, of what can happen, is a baby, a human life could start to be developed inside of you. And so to stop that from happening, use a condom, take a pill, all these different things, because it was such a normal part of the human experience. It was like, yeah, if you want to do this without, being, having that consequence of that decision, not a bad consequence, just a consequence of that decision, then you want to take these steps. And so from the very beginning, I had like a hair in my lip, sorry. From the very beginning, it was as if we knew, like 7th grade at least, not the very beginning, but from 7th grade, we knew that humans having sex is mating. Just like animals, the purpose is to create offspring, to procreate, to have offspring come from you. And got the hair. So from that place, I think because we've known that, we've had to justify reasons for ending the human life when we've had sex and it's resulted in a pregnancy that we didn't want. And because we knew that was the byproduct of the decisions that we had made. And one thing I'll identify, some people can get very angry at me just for saying that, because some people know that women have been raped and they've been pregnant because of that. They've gotten pregnant because of that. And I want you to know, I understand that. But the reality is that is 1% of all abortions have been reported because women have been raped. By and large, that is not the major factor for why women have abortions. Number one factor is because it's going to create a major life change. I think it's 74%. Then on top of that, I believe 80+% of women who have abortions are single women, meaning that these individuals are choosing to step into the pleasure of sexual encounter, but they're ignoring the science and the reality of their human existence that they were born into, which was that sexual encounter's purpose is to procreate and develop more offspring. It's to create other human life. And so I think that we've really been set up to fail, if I'm honest with you, from the very beginning, because while we learned that in 7th grade, we then got inundated with movies and music and television and a cultural perspective that just says that sex is all about you, all about you, all about you, your pleasure, your needs, your wants, whatever. Doesn't matter if you know her name, hit it, quit it, whatever it looks like it's always been about the pleasure and the selfishness of it. So why would there be any shift of our perspective if we get pregnant off of ourselves and our lives changing when everything we did with sex from the very beginning was all about us anyway? Unfortunately, our culture has really stolen away from the human responsibility and the reality we were born into of the earth, that we are beings that procreate, and that's how it happens. And that sex isn't just about us. Sex is the mechanism that, whether you're a person of faith or not, is the mechanism that our privileged species uses to mate and to create other people. And one thing I want to highlight here too is just human responsibility. When it comes to sex, we have to take responsibility. We are not like that song in the early 2000s that said, you and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals, so let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. I cannot give a reference. I forget who sings it. Or a Lil Wayne song that's like, I wish I could have sex with every woman and girl in the world. That's not humanity. We are not like lions in the savannah. We are not like zebras, in the Masai Mara Reserve in Kenya. That is not us. We are a privileged species, and I can prove it to you. You might be like, well, we're just animals. We're like everybody else. No, we're not. If we were, then nobody will get put in jail for murder. If we were, it would be survival of the fittest. There would be, you can hurt people. You can do whatever you want to get advantage in life, and there would be no consequences. That's not us. We're a privileged species. Whether you call it the evolution of our minds, or if you're a person of faith, the way we were created, like, we are different, and our moral code is different, and our responsibility is different. We are not like a zebra in Africa. It's no zebra laying out there on the savannah, weeping because their mate went and mated with 3 other zebras. And nobody's doing that. But humans, we do. When we get cheated on, we freak out. And it hurts because we're different. And with that difference comes a greater human responsibility. And unfortunately, our culture doesn't talk about that. So like I said, we've been set up to fail in a lot of ways. And so we have to justify our lack of self-control, our lack of responsibility with our sexuality, and we have to justify away really ending the consequence of our decision. And unfortunately, we've called humans a consequence that isn't worth moving forward with. And I want to address some of the things that we've used to justify. And I'm going to look at some notes because I want to hit them right head on and not miss any. So the first thing we say is that it's a woman's body. And yes, it is. I saw that in my wife when she was pregnant with Liv. Her body changed, like it really did. Like there was a change in her body. It was her body, but the way she's designed, and every woman is designed, in our species, our offspring are developed inside of your body. We're mammals in that sense. I know I referenced that song, but in that sense, we give birth to live offspring from our bodies. We don't lay eggs like other animals. Our offsprings develop inside of us. But that doesn't mean that offspring inside of you is your body. It is not. That is a unique human being. To act as if it isn't is ridiculous. As I was sitting there, like I said, during my wife's pregnancy, feeling my wife's body moving, her stomach moving on the inside, I clearly knew that was not her body. That was a unique human inside of her that had a unique mind, a unique brain that was controlling her arms. It was a unique heartbeat. And the baby inside of women, you guys, they swallow, they dream, they have fingernails, they have a heartbeat. That their mind, their brain is working before they ever breathe their first breath. And I think it's important also to note that people say, well, the baby wouldn't be viable apart from the mother. You guys, that's true for the whole first year of the human life. Liv right now, if we didn't take care of her, she would die. That doesn't mean that we can choose to end her life right now because she wouldn't be viable apart from us. That's ridiculous. Whether the baby is tethered to you through an umbilical cord and you're, creating blood flow and food and all that kind of stuff. Wow, what a unique privilege. It's amazing and beautiful as a woman to have that. But I mean, whether it's that or you nursing or you carrying or you just nurturing that baby outside of the womb, it involves human involvement. We're not justifying ending a human life after it's born. Why are we trying to justify it before it comes out of the mother's stomach? That doesn't make sense. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make sense. And so moving on to the next thing, it's a woman's choice. And sometimes people define humanity, they choose to define humanity as saying, hey, it's only a baby if the woman wants it, but if she doesn't want it, it's not a baby. That is insanity. I can't think of a different description. It's insanity. In our country, on the same street, you can go to a hospital where a woman has had a premature baby at 24 weeks, and a doctor and nurses will be fighting to save the baby. And right down the road in a different building, another doctor will be convincing a woman at 24 weeks that it's not a human or a baby inside of her so that the abortion can proceed. The mother's perception on whether she wants the human to keep developing and develop or not, her desire for that to happen doesn't change anything about the reality of the human inside of her. To say that is just, it makes no sense. It's insanity. The next thing I want to talk about, I had my notes on my computer, it froze, so I had to go back to it. The next thing I want to talk about is the idea of it's illegal. And I don't remember in my earlier thoughts if I alluded to this or not, but just because something's legal doesn't mean that it should be, or that it should be a reality in our world. You guys, slavery was legal. Doesn't mean it was right. And in every generation, it takes abolitionists and people standing up to say when things are wrong and not right, and stand and say, this needs to change. And I'm saying in our generation, this needs to change. This is not the best solution for humanity. This is not the best outcome for humans. This is ignoring our humanity and settling for being lesser people. And it's not okay. And it might be legal, but it should not be legal. And so that's what I want to say about that. And the next one is the argument that it isn't a baby. It's a fetus or an embryo. You're right. It isn't a baby. It is a fetus. It is an embryo. But what you're simply doing is you're defining a stage in a human life cycle, or development, not life cycle, excuse me, human life cycle or development. And what I mean by that is that whether you call it an embryo or a baby or an infant or an adolescent or an adult, you're simply defining a stage in the development of a human's life. We don't look at other stages in development of a human life and justify away their death or murder and saying, oh, well, they were just an infant, or they were just a toddler, or they were just an adolescent. No, we don't do that. We acknowledge that in every stage of human life, even though that things are still developing, it's a human. And inside of a woman, whether you call it a fetus or an embryo, it is a human. It is a human being. And so I think it's important that we stop trying to justify away this by saying it's not a human. I already talked about the viability issue. Babies aren't even viable after they're born apart from human care. Doesn't mean that we can take their life without it being, a not a good thing to do. That doesn't hold up. That argument is ridiculous as well. And then the next thing I want to talk about is that when people find themselves in difficult situations where they're living in poverty, or they're single mothers or whatnot, and they think of this as being merciful, saying, hey, it's better for me to end this baby's life. And you might be watching this, you might be pregnant, you might be thinking this, that it's better for me to end this baby's life than for me to bring this baby into the world that I'm living in right now. Guys, I just want to remind you of the things you've went through in your life and you've made it through. Humans are incredibly resilient species. We're incredibly resilient people, that even though you are born into something that might be difficult, whether it be poverty, whether it be famine, no matter what it might be, is that we have the ability to endure. And I think that every human that is developing in the life inside of a woman should be given the opportunity to live life, should be given the opportunity to make it. You guys, there's been incredible stories of people. I know personally, my mother took in a baby, newborn baby, of a drug-addicted prostitute in Akron, Ohio. She took this baby in and cared for this baby until it was able to find an adoptive family. And this child is now living with an amazing family, 2 brothers that love him, a family, mom, dad that love him. If that woman would have said it would be better for me to abort this baby than bring him into the world because of her reality, she would have been missing the reality and the beautiful things she could have created for another human that happened for her son when he was born, through the story I just told you. I have another friend, that incredible singer, works with me in nonprofit work, that she was the product of a one-night stand. And if her mom would have thought that, oh, it's one night stand, my life's going to change, I wouldn't have that friend and the world wouldn't be blessed through them. You guys, life is hard, and if you're waiting for life to be perfect, or if a lot of humanity waited for life to be perfect, or money to be, right, or the number of kids to be just right, how many of us wouldn't even be alive today if that was the qualifying factor? It's not mercy. It's not mercy. Mercy is giving them a chance to live and being the best mother, or giving them to someone that can care for them well, to live a life. And I want to, just say, I see your heart. If you're contemplating this right now, I see that you're really considering this and you really want to do what's best. I want you to know that you've got what it takes. You have what it takes to get through this. That this baby needs you. You can do it. You're amazing. You were born for this. You're literally made for this. Your body will function beautifully through this. And there's so many people that want to support you and see you through, and even people that can't have children, that can't conceive, that they'd be honored to adopt your child if you don't feel like you can care for them well. And so I just want to say that even this argument is not justifiable. And the final thing I want to talk about is individuals who talk about this topic and say, hey, unless you're willing to adopt children, or if you're not doing anything to help mothers in need, then keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. I agree that adoption is so important, that we should consider adoption. We should consider foster care. At the same time, I think that speaking out and using your voice for those who we yet can't hear is also important. And like I said, this responsibility, yes, there is a responsibility on humanity as a whole to help each other, but ultimately the responsibility of carrying out the life unto birth of a child within you, or a human within you, it falls on the individual. It's them taking human responsibility. There's been countless people that have lined up for adoption, and yet people still continue to have abortions while people are waiting on children to adopt. So I do think you should adopt, but I also think you should speak out. Saying that you shouldn't speak out unless you've done something about it is saying that we shouldn't, say that a dictator shouldn't kill his people in his country unless we've taken in some of those people as refugees into our home. Like, it doesn't make sense. In the same way, to say that you shouldn't speak out on this, this reality in our world unless you're taking in or adopting kids, it doesn't make sense. The responsibility lies with the people who are choosing to move forward with abortions. It also lies with humanity to help them make a different choice. But you should speak out. Whether you've adopted or not, you should speak out, and you should also adopt, and you should also care for children through fostering. And so, you guys, I just want you to know that we can be different, that the reality we live in doesn't have to be like it is today. And like I said, I don't think abortion is the optimal solution for the issues for which people have them. I think there's a better course, there's a better direction. I think it involves taking responsibility for our sexuality and breaking away from the cultural narrative that it's all about us and our pleasure. I think it's stripping away these just asinine statements that defend our decision. And it's getting real with ourselves, starting with ourselves, and then training up the next generation to say, no, we don't have to go down the same path as the people in front of us. We don't have to agree with the generation in front of us who is justifying this. We can stand and say that this isn't going to be what's going to be in our generation. This doesn't have to be legal. This doesn't have to be reality. This can be ended. We can have an adoption movement. We can have a life movement that's for the unborn and those who are walking among us today. You guys, I'm an idealist, and I really believe that this can be a reality, and that in our generation, we can see the ending of abortion in our nation, and we can see children celebrated again, and we can see people empowered again, no matter where you fall on this side, the sides of the spectrum on this. I hope you're challenged by what I shared today. I hope you know I'm not against you, I'm for you, that I love you, and I'm here for you. And if you ever need anybody to talk to, you ever need anybody to stand with, you ever have any questions, you just need a friend, you let me know. And I'll be there for you as much as I can to the best of my ability. Tomorrow, guys, I'm going to continue this conversation with a really honest talk on abortion as it pertains to individuals with disabilities. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Love you. Bless you. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.